How many Hebrews can there be? Will there be? Were there? We believe that the lost 10 tribes now are to be found amongst Western nations, and that is where the majority of the lost 10 tribes are. That is where the lost 10 tribes are to be found as coherent, cohesive entities that give expression to their tribal origins as was prophesied. So people ask, but there's a large number of people there, how could they grow to such numbers? So first of all, we say that we don't say that everyone in those areas, in those countries, the countries we are speaking of include the USA, Canada, they include Australia, New Zealand, they include Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, they include Holland, they include Belgium, Switzerland, France, and these are large countries. Some of them are very populous, and they are the majority of the Israelite nations, and they do not know their identity. They are unaware of their ancestry. Nevertheless, they are the lost 10 tribes, and they in the future will know who they are, will be made known unto them who they are. They will reunite with Judah, the Jewish people. And we do not say that everyone in those nations is a descendant of Israel. We do say that is where the lost 10 tribes are, and those 10 tribes are a major influence in those areas. They have been a decisive element historically. In some cases they may well be the majority of the population, but we cannot say, or perhaps we could say, but we are not saying. We have not studied the subject in sufficient depth. And we suffice to say at the moment that that is where the lost 10 tribes are, that is where they are to be found, and that is where they must be looked for, and that is the area where this knowledge must be made known to the inhabitants of those regions, that they are descended from Israel, and that they have obligations concomitant with their ancestry, and as well as rights and blessings that accrue to them. This brings up a subject. It brings up a subject concerning the numbers that were prophesied about the lost 10 tribes. How many of them would be? How many of them there are? And we have mentioned this. We have spoken about this. This is our second talk on this subject. We have another YouTube. Clip about this same subject on the same matter. It's called Immense Multitudes, or how many of them were. How many Israelites are there? And it also may be seen in the same series. Now we are going to discuss other aspects that touch on this matter, connected with this matter. And according to the Bible, the Israelites were promised that they would be extremely numerous. So promised that they should be as the dust of the earth. See Numbers 23:10. And sand of the sea, Genesis 22:17. Genesis 32:12, Isaiah 10:22, Hosea 1-10. God will promise that they should number vast numbers of people. To be as the dust of the earth, Numbers 23:10. A sand of the sea, Genesis 22:17, 33:12, Hosea 10:22. To be as the dust of the earth, Numbers 23:10. A sand of the sea, Genesis 22:17, 32:12, Isaiah 10:22. Hosea 1:10, and there would also to be as stars of the heavens. See Genesis 15:5, 22:17. There were to be a great number of people. Also Rebecca was the wife of Isaac, and she was the matriarch. She was one of the ancestors of the Israelite nations, and when she went to marry Isaac, she was blessed by her family, and they said to her, "You are our sister, be you the mother of thousands and millions, and let your seed possess the gate of those that hate them." So she was blessed that she should be the mother of thousands and millions according to the King James. But the King James common translation of Alpha Ravava, which is the Hebrew, is not agreed upon by everyone. Incidentally, we do agree with it, but most people do not. So let's have a little discussion about this, and then we go on to what we were speaking of. She was promised. Rebecca was promised, was blessed. Be you the mother of thousands and millions, and let your seed possess the gate of those that hate them. And the expression thousands of millions in Hebrew is alpay rabba. Literally in modern Hebrew that would be translated as thousands of 10,000s. Alpay is thousands, and it's joined to rabba, which means tens of thousands. In other words, thousands of tens of thousands. Thousands of tens of thousands means tens of millions. 1,000 thousands is a million, so tens of these. And this is how it is. It is translated in most modern translations. We have a list: English Standard Version, New American Standard Bible, Holman Christian Standard Bible, International Standard Version, American Standard Version, Darby Bible Translation, English Revised Version, World English Bible, Young's Literal Translation, Darby Bible Translation. All of them translated as tens of millions. Thousands of 10,000s, tens of millions. A few translations try to minimize the numbers. The Douay Reims Bible says thousands of thousands. The New International Version also says thousands upon thousands. The New Living Translation says many millions. The God's Word translation said many thousands. And as we said, the King James Version says thousands of millions. The Webster's Bible translation agrees with the King James Version. Also, so does Clark's commentary on the Bible, also agree with the King James Version. Thousands of 10,000s or myriads of thousands, thousands of millions. He gives us all of the options, but he does leave that option open. As we said, the King James translated as thousands of millions, as did Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. And the King James Version does not really correspond with the Hebrew. So at all events, we have three options. We have three options concerning this blessing to Rebekah in Genesis 24:60. What, tens of millions? It was a majority opinion. Many thousands and many millions, that was a minority view. Well, thousands of millions according to the King James. So first of all, the one said many thousands or many millions. So the minority view, and it's not according to the literal Hebrew. The literal Hebrew does not say that. The literal Hebrew is definitely speaking tens of 10,000s, meaning tens of millions. That is how most of them translated. The King James said thousands of millions, which is also a possibility. The Israelites being blessed that they should be a large number of people, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, thousands of millions, a very great number of people. Also in Genesis 48:16, Jacob, that is Israel, Jacob was also known as Israel. He blessed the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he said that they should become a multitude in the midst of the earth. The word translated as multitude in Hebrew is Rav, meaning a majority. In other words, they were destined to become one of the major ethnic groups in world's population according to the Bible, according to the blessings. This was what was promised to them. Therefore, we have to look for the lost and tribes amongst major ethnic entities, major ethnic divisions of the world, and that is indeed where we find them. The peoples whom we identify as being from the lost and tribes, those peoples of Western Europe or Western Europe ancestry, they are somewhat different from other peoples. They have their own unique ethnic identity, homogeneity to some degree, you could say. And these are they whom the Bible identifies as being descended from Israel. So that is a point that should be taken into consideration, and that is one of the proofs we have identifying these peoples. We have other proofs, and we insist upon taking all the different pieces of evidence together and having them comprise a composite whole, holistic body group of evidence, each different part interlocking with the other and supplementing and complementing each other. And only so, and only in this way, is there different evidence and various proofs that the Bible brings. It's only fair to consider everything together, and only the peoples whom we are speaking of, only they fit all of the different proofs that exist. And at all events, we received a letter from someone called Peter Salami. He is well known in certain circles, identity circles, British Israelite circles, and he wrote us a letter, and he quoted an argument, someone else's argument against the British Israel ideas, which are similar to our own, not exactly the same but similar. He quoted an argument against them, concerning this matter of population. The argument says that in Jacob's day, the patriarch, there was at a very conservative estimate 1 man in a world population of at least 6 million. So Jacob, the forefather of the Israelite nation, Jacob is also known as Israel. When he was alive, according to this, there were already 6 million people on the earth. I don't know if this is true or not, but if it is, so what? The letter says that the present combined populations of the alleged British Israelite nations, Britain, Ephraim, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, in Western Europe, Denmark, Saxony, Dan, so on, is about 1,000 million. That's what the letter says. So there's 1 UK billion, 1,000 million, which is approximately 1/6 of the world's present population of about 6,000 million. Anyway, that's what they say. I don't know if this is correct or not, but assuming that it is. And the letter goes on, consider that for a moment this astonishing fact, if the British Israel theory were true, it would mean that Jacob's descendants would somehow grow from being 1 in 6 million, as in the time of Jacob's time there were 1 in 6 million, Jacob was 1, and there were 6 million assumedly in the world at that time, to 1 in 6. Statistically that is impossible, he says. History provides no evidence whatsoever for that the birth rate of other nations, China, India, Africa, etc., virtually stood still, whilst Jacob's descendants, Britain, USA and Western Europe, outstripped them to such an extent. If anything, history tells us the very opposite was true. The population explosion occurred elsewhere, China, India and Africa, not amongst the white races. In other words, statistically, the theory about Britain, the USA and Western Europe being lost in tribes of Israel is a non-starter. It cannot be true. How do you respond to this? Thanks, Peter. So, first of all, we answer this type of question in several ways. As we said, we do not necessarily say that at present most of the population in other countries we identify as being Israelite nations are necessarily descendants of Israel, though in some cases there may be. That is one point. In some countries there may be a minority. So the numbers have to be cut down a little bit. And apart from that, the history that it was quoted is wrong. The history is mistaken. There were population explosions amongst the so-called white races as well as amongst the coloured peoples. In Britain, we know that there were agricultural revolutions or industrial revolutions, and this caused the population to expand rapidly and very greatly. For most of its early history, Britain, England, that is, England was scarcely 1/5 the population of France. Even though the English used to go frequently to France, fight all kinds of battles, and they were aggressors, their population base was much smaller than that of the French. In the 1700s it equaled them. It had expanded, and the French population had also grown, but the English population had grown much greater. In Europe on the whole, after the discovery of America in 1492, from America, Europe introduced tomato, cassava into Africa, maize, corn into Africa as well, and potatoes into Europe. And in the maize and the cassava in Africa caused a population explosion amongst the black peoples, and this surplus of population was what the later slave trade was to feed off. And we have dealt with this in another talk. Whereas in Europe, the population explosion was helped. It was helped by the potato. It was also helped by the agricultural revolution and by the industrial revolution. And in some places such as Ireland, the population grew at a phenomenal rate. From a very small number of people, Ireland expanded to encompass perhaps 10 million or more people, 3 times than it does at present, more than it ever has done in history. Then there was a series of diseases on the potatoes, the blight on the potatoes. The potato harvest failed. People were dying of starvation, so millions of them migrated to North America and to other areas. And this is well known in Irish history. It's a very traumatic and momentous event, and similar events happened elsewhere in Europe, not to such a degree, but they did happen, they did take place. And so this is an example of how of the population explosion, the expansion of European population that took place in a very short time. Between Wikipedia tells us that between 1700 and 1900, Europe's population, the population of Europe, increased from about 100 million to over 400 million. So it increased by more than 3 or 4 times over. And by 1900, the areas of European settlement comprised about 36% of the world's population. There's no problem here. In fact, we may ask, as we shall see, not how the population could be so great if these people are descended from those tribes of Israel, but why it is not much greater than it actually is. Why it is not much greater than it really is. In the Bible, we have an example of a population explosion. When Jacob went down to Egypt with his sons, the ancestors, the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel, he and his sons and his grandsons, they numbered 70 males, and they went down there with their women folk and their children, and they increased and multiplied in Egypt until they numbered more than 600,000 males between the ages of 20 and 60. Not counting people below the ages of 20 and over the ages of 60, and not counting the females, not counting the tribe of Levi. And there was also a large mixed multitude that went out of them with Egypt. And this population must have, if you count in everyone, must have been about 3 to 4 million, if not more than this. And they were there. This is supposed to have taken a maximum 400 years, or maybe, according to one count, 400 and a few more years. And so how could this large expansion have taken place? So we will go into this according to the Bible, according to the different verses in the Hebrew script, and according to the commentaries and the sources at another time. But now, just to whet your appetite, as if to say, to provide you with an idea of what took place, we should know that at that time the Israelites practiced polygamy. Apart from the tribe of Levi, most of them took more than one woman. There were also more females being born than males, and there were many males per family. Nevertheless, as we may be seen by the number of firstborn children who were later atoned for. And there was some kind of freak combination at that time of genetic predisposition, the area of Goshen, the actual region, and that the Israelites were stationed in that part of Egypt, also the environment at the time, and we may see parallels to this today in different parts of the world. Also, the Israelites, due to this freak of nature, this freak occurrence that occurred, they were unable to give birth quickly and safely, and they recover almost at once to finish weaning quickly, and then go back to giving birth to children. They had multiple births. The children were 6 or more were born in one womb. The children who came out were able to look after themselves in a short time. They reached puberty early, and they entered the reproductive cycle together with their parents at an early date. And it didn't take this, at this rate, it wouldn't have taken that long for them to have reached the numbers that the Bible says that they did. And we will explain this later and bring more proofs of it, but this is our understanding of the occurrence. And there are parallels to it in nature and in human nature. And such events have occurred. Population explosions have occurred elsewhere. The French Canadians at one stage were a small minority in Canada. They didn't want to be a small minority. They wanted to increase their numbers, to increase their influence and their say in this country. So they had what you could say, a national campaign to bring as many children as they could. And bring in 15 or more children. Eventually they did become a sizable element. They did increase, and their increase has been compared to that of the Israelites in Egypt. It's not exactly the same, but there is a parallelism there. Historically, at the time of the Roman Empire, there were 3 to 4 million Jews in the world. The Jews represent the kingdom of Judah. When the lost 10 tribes separated from the kingdom of Judah, they set up the kingdom of Israel. Originally there was one kingdom of Israel under King Saul, David, Solomon, then came Rehoboam, or Rehoboam as his name is translated into English. In his time the nation split into two different sections. The northern section was the kingdom of Israel, the southern section was the kingdom of Judah. From the kingdom of Israel, that belonged to the 10 tribes, came the 10 tribes, and they went into exile, taken into exile, and lost consciousness of identity. Those who remained behind comprised the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, after that Levi, and minority members of all of the other tribes. But nevertheless, since also from them a lot went into the lost 10 tribes, a lot of Judah were also taken away with the lost 10 tribes into exile, so we may say that it balanced itself out more or less, and that the Jewish people were represented by only 2 of the tribes of Israel. In the time of the Roman Empire, there were 3 or 4 million of these Jews in the world. At that time in China, there was about an equal number of Chinese, so 3 or 4 million Chinese in the world. And there were maybe 2 million people in the British Isles. At that time, there were more Jews in the world than there were people in the Isles of Britain. Later in the Dark Ages, it's called Dark Ages, up in the early, before the Middle Ages, 400 to about 1100 and onwards, the Dark Ages, the population of Britain decreased to about 1 million. Also that of the Jews, all over the world the population decreased, and the population of the Jews went down to even less than 1 million. So we see that nation numbers go up, numbers go down, and one stage, one party is more populous than the other, then it's reduced, and the other goes up a little bit. And sometimes the up goes way up, and the other one almost disappears. And this is also something that we should notice that happens. With all events, we saw that 2 tribes of Judah, representing the kingdom of Judah, descended from the kingdom of Judah, Jews. At that time, at the time of the Romans, had an equal population to that of China. Today, China has an estimated 1,284 million people. No, much more. This was in 2002. Today has much more than that. Multiply, that is what the Jews should have, 2 tribes of Israel should have, if they had multiplied at the same rate as the Chinese did. Jews representing only 2 tribes of the 12 tribes, therefore represent 1/6 of the nation of Israel, according to their tribes, number of tribes. So if you multiply the number of Chinese that now exist by 6, you should get the number of Israelites who would exist if they had increased at the same rate as the Chinese did. And so you get 6 million, more than 6 million people, which is more than the total population of the world today. And so this obviously did not happen. So they did not multiply as much as the Chinese did, but they did multiply, they did increase and multiply. They are a significant portion of the world's population as it was prophesied that they would be. But they are not as great as they could be unless as they could have been, as the Chinese have been. The Chinese are not from the 10 tribes. The Chinese are not from the 10 tribes of Israel. But the Western nations of European ancestry, they are of Israelite descent. They are the 10 tribes of Israel, and they have increased and multiplied as it was prophesied that they would be. And not only have they increased and multiplied as it was prophesied that the Israelites would do, but they have also fulfilled the other criteria that are necessary to qualify or to be identified by in Scripture as belonging to the tribes of Israel. So the question is not so much why they are so numerous, if they belong to the tribes of Israel, if they descend of Israel, why is it that they number so many people, but rather why don't they number even more than they do? We find that Moses blessed the Israelites. The Lord your God has multiplied, and here you are today as the stars of heaven in multitude. May the Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times more numerous than you are, and bless you as he has promised you in Deuteronomy chapter 1 verses 10 to 11. So here Moses blessed the Israelites so that they should increase 1,000-fold over. That time they numbered 600,000 males who went out to war. 1,000 times 600,000 makes 600 million. 600 million males, onto which must be added females and children under the age of 20 and men over the age of 60. So we have not yet reached those numbers, but God willing we will do so. And you could say we are on the way. It is already feasible that those numbers could be reached. And this is a blessing that was promised to us, and this is a blessing that God willing we shall achieve and should aspire to, as we should aspire to fulfill the other blessings of the Bible, and to carry out the concomitant duties that these blessings entail, to do our duty, to worship the God of Israel, and to do what the God of Israel wants us to do. This fact concerning the 600,000 males who then existed, and they eventually being multiplied by 1,000 times over according to the blessing of Moses, was pointed out to us by our friend Colbert Brian. May God bless all of you. May the God of Israel be with all of you and with your families. Thank you very much. This is Yair Davidi. I've been speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and I've been speaking to you on behalf of Brit and Hebrew Nations, an organisation and a movement that believes lost and tribes are to be amongst Western peoples and aspires to provide proof of this to the public and to bring about reconciliation between the Jewish people and between the 10 tribes of Israel in the West. Thank you.